Greetings, my name is Chlorastroklos, and in this video I'm going to present a tier list for weapons for Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. As you can see, I finished last season in top 100 and was awarded the Dominant banner, and since this next season is pretty much the same as the last one, I'm pretty confident I can give you the tips that you'll need to succeed and reach top 100 yourself in this following season. If there's a patch or something, I'll release another tier list, but for now, we're playing on 1.06.1, and I have a pretty good understanding of this patch, so let's jump right into it. First things first, equipping nothing, not very good. Pretty much always want to at least equip a weapon in the weapon bay so you can put your weapon on your back and punch people. You can always purge. Speaking of punching people is pretty good. This is good for combo extending. I've seen a couple people use it to high effect, even very high ranked on the ladder, so I recommend it for some builds. Kicking is just good, especially with biped legs. RJ legs kick is even better. I'm not gonna say it's S tier, but it's better than the biped leg kick. Quad kick, also better than biped leg kick. I'm not sure if it's better than the RJ kick. The range is like not so good, but it's mostly because of the weight on the quads, not necessarily anything wrong with the hitbox. It's just harder to get in range to actually kick someone with a quad. Tank kick's good. It's definitely better than punching someone. I'm not sure it's as good as the other three kicks. It's got a pretty long wind up. A lot of people think it's very OP, but these are more for like movement reasons. I don't really consider that a weapon. Rensetsu RF. I believe this is RF? Yeah. This weapon is very good. This is probably the best rifle. I'm going to put it in B tier. I think rifles are... Like, this is a playable build, but rifles are not necessarily top tier. Moving on to the Curtis. I haven't really seen anyone use the Curtis. I'm not sure it fits in with any builds. I'm going to put it in D tier. It might be a high D tier, but I just don't see it used. People mostly use the Harris above the Curtis. Harris. This is another decent weapon. I think it's probably not as good as the Rensetsu RF. It does work with rifle builds, and it works with a lot of combo builds as well, but it's a bit finicky. Sometimes it misses in situations where you don't feel like it should, and I'm not sure that there's any real reason to run it over Rensetsu RF in a rifle build. Turner. I've seen people run this, but I don't believe in it. It's just a higher DPS rifle with lower range and accuracy. I think you should probably just use the Rensetsu RF if you want to play this kind of playstyle. Scudder, sort of the same story for the Turner, except it's a little bit better. Rensetsu AR, this weapon's terrible. Usually you just drop it, so I would say, I mean, it's not worse than equipping nothing, but it's really, really, really quite bad. Lidlow. The Lidlow is playable. Is it good? Probably not. It's playable. Gauchen. It's a little bit better than the Ludlow in some situations. I actually think the way that the Ludlow lines up with the Gatling cannon might make this better, but I mean we're really splitting hairs here. Like it doesn't actually matter which of these two weapons are better than the other because they're both pretty bad. I'm gonna put this one above. Attaché. The Attaché is really bad. I don't know if it's as bad as the Rensetsu, but it's really bad. I would not recommend running this. Etsujin. Etsujin got buffed. Etsujin is actually playable. I don't know if it's better than the Rensetsu RF. I'm really not sure. I think I'll put it just below. Etsujin is pretty good at stagger buildup. It has decent range. It applies a lot of pressure. If you really want to play kinetics, like this is one of the weapons you should be looking at. The GAT. I don't remember the full name for the GAT. GAT is one of the worst weapons in the game. I think it might be worse than this rifle. It's very, very bad. It's just... You just have to invest so much to do like less DPS than other weapons. I don't recommend... I mean, you could play it if you think it's funny, but it doesn't seem super good. I still believe the Haldeman is good. Is the Haldeman better than kicking someone? Probably not, but it's quite good. I like it for kick chaining. It's good to swap with Zims. You pretty much never see it otherwise, but I think it's also pretty good for building up stagger, especially if you're chaining it with kicks. So maybe consider this for melee builds. Zimmerman. Alright, I'm going to put the Zimmerman in S tier. I don't think I should. I'm not sure it's that OP. It's going to be at the bottom of S tier eventually, but everyone hates this weapon. They're sick of it being good, and I will just admit that it is very good. And in the current meta, it beats the best build in the game, which is Lamb. So you should consider playing Zimmermans if you like CQC. They're just very strong. Sweet 16. I think there's a build for this. It's a pretty good punish weapon. It's probably better than punching someone to extend a combo. Is it better than this other stuff? Not really. There's probably better punishes as well, but there's definitely room for it. It's very, very fast, and I love speed when you're trying to extend just perform a combo. Not having to lock into an animation is really valuable. Cocklet. I think this weapon's pretty good. Is it better than it's somewhere around the Haldeman. It's about the same. It's probably a little worse. It probably misses more than the Haldeman, and Haldeman is a little bit better at like hit and run kind of tactics. But I think this is pretty good for melee builds. The place where I've really seen this struggle is against Lammergeier, which is the best build in the game. So you probably want to like not play this, even though it's good against everything else. Because if you really want to beat the best build, this is not going to be the most effective weapon to do so. The Ducat. Just kidding. Ducat's pretty bad. It's just worse than the Cocklet in almost every single way. Because it's still a fine weapon, but because it gets outclassed in every way, I'm going to put it down in D tier because you really shouldn't run it. Sampu. I don't know really where the Sampu goes. I think it is a little bit worse than the Cocklet. I think it is probably a bit suspicious. But I think there's potentially a build it slots into. It's very, very low weight, which is really nice. And it does like a meaningful amount of stagger. It's only CQC, but you know, that's sort of the way the game's meant to be played anyway. So I would recommend running the Sampu, giving it a shot. Viento. This is going to be controversial maybe, but I'm putting the Viento behind the Cocklet. It's still a good stagger weapon. It got nerfed. It's not as good as it used to be, and I think the Cocklet is better now. But there's something to be said for running the Viento. It's probably better with Basho than the Cocklet is. But I don't think it's... I think this one's just a little bit better. Just in my experience. These are really, really close. But they play totally differently, so just try them out and choose which one you like best for yourself. Stun Gun. This is like a meme weapon. It's an annoying meme weapon, and it's good, but it's a meme weapon nonetheless. I think it's a better meme weapon than the Harris? Do I? Yeah, it's a better meme weapon than the Harris. It's really annoying to lose to this, and it's pretty easy to trivialize it by equipping a head part with high status resist, but, you know, it is fun to win with it, so. And it is, like, it is reasonable to win with it. It overwhelms a lot of, like, tanks and things like that. Schwanga. This weapon is playable. It's better than combo extending, probably. It does get outclassed in some situations, but its short reload speed means that if you're getting pressured a lot, sometimes it is better than the Majestic. So consider running the Schwanga. It's a bazooka, it's fun. The projectile speed is a little bit slower than the Majestic, but the fire rate's faster. And I think the AoE detonation is like 1 meter longer, if that matters to you. Majestic. Majestic's great. I'm going to put Majestic, it's not S tier, but I'm putting it in A tier. And I'm going to put it at the top. Majestic is a very fast bazooka, blows up on people, makes them suffer. It's very good on specific builds. And with the buff to the Walter FCS, it's even better than it used to be. I'm a big fan of the Majestic, and it's not often that the bazookas really feel like bazookas in Armored Core games, but this one really does. It's awesome. So if you like bazookas, pick this weapon up, and you won't regret it. Little Gem. I I don't know. I don't know why you would ever run this. Maybe there's a reason. It's better than all of these. It's better than all the rifles, but I don't know what build this is for. Just play Majestic. It's like it's worth the wait. Like whatever concessions you have to make to play Majestic, it's like worth it. Jalfa, Javelin Alpha. This is a good bazooka. It's similar to the Majestic. It's not going to be as close to the Majestic as once the tier list is finished, as it is right now. But this is a very good weapon. It's good at punishing. It doesn't have proc stat, but the damage is crazy. The stagger is crazy. The crit damage is crazy. So if you can land hits with this, it is very, very good. I believe this is the Gauchen. I don't see a use case for the Gauchen. I'm not even sure it's better than the rifles and the machine guns. I'm going to put it... is it better than the rifles and the machine guns? I mean, it's just a bunch of burst damage, so it's probably better than the rifles and the machine guns. I'll just put it here. Gauchen is just a grenade. Has a really long reload. You're going to die while it's reloading. If you find a use for it, that'd be cool, but I have not found a use for it. Dizzy. Dizzy. There's got to be a Dizzy build. The only reason I believe that this build will work is because the Walter FCS got buffed, and Dizzy explodes at like 300 meters, which is like a really nice range to catch people with the explosion. It kind of works like proc stat. However, the stun and damage fall off, so you want them to be sort of closer to the explosion, but I think there is a Dizzy build out there somewhere, and I want you to try this so that I can be proven right and vindicated. That said, it's not going to be the first thing I try next season. I'm putting it somewhere in B tier. It's probably better than combo extending. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's better than combo extending. But this is where it's going to live. Iridium. Similar to the Little Gem. I don't know when you will use this. And I don't know that I should recommend it ever. I don't think it's D tier because it does a lot of burst stagger, but I don't know what it's for. I think this is the flame grenade. This weapon is it's really bad. Don't use this. People could just fly away from you. You're gonna be really unhappy. Almost anything else is better. Smoke launcher. This weapon's nuts. It's totally nuts. It's better than Majestic. You should learn smoke. I don't know how to play this, but this is like the most sleeper weapon in the game. I'm considering even putting it at S tier, although it kind of gets hard countered by like Rushdown, so I don't really think it's like that dominant, but this thing is like so useful. You're going to beat a ton of players if you learn how to abuse it. I would learn it. Therapist. Finally, this weapon is good. I think this weapon goes in A tier. I think it's better than whatever pistols are doing to build up stagger. I'm not sure if it's better than building up stagger with the Haldeman, but it is really consistent. It's usually better on like kite builds, so you kite back and just fire Therapist at someone while they're crying. And they don't, weirdly, they don't get better. Their mental won't recover. That's not what this kind of therapist does. And eventually they'll just be very shocked about the things that you say to them and die. So definitely try out the therapist. It's cool to have like a mid-range option. I really wish we were back on 1.06 because when this weapon was completely busted, it was super fun and it made the gameplay completely differently. But that was only 2 days of fun that I'm not even sure was real at this point. Anyway, the weapon's still good. It was definitely OP during 1.06, so not actually legitimately asking for that back, but try it out if you like kite builds. This might be a weapon you would enjoy. The Bad Cook. Is the Bad Cook good? There's got to be a build for it. I had somebody already today shoot me with 2 Bad Cooks and then try to cycle earshots on me and stagger me while they're DPSing me with bad cooks. I think that was probably really good. Is it better than punching people? It's probably better than the dizzy. It's probably like, it's like more real than the dizzy. So yeah, if you like fire, if you like status effects, this one's pretty good for you. It lowers their stagger threshold. So you can like do some cheesy stuff with higher stagger weapons. I don't know if there's anything else it really does. We've seen this weapon be really dominant in the past, but none of the builds are really excelling with it right now. I don't know why. It seems like you could just assault boost and run this at Lamb with the flamethrowers, but maybe Hammer just peels you off or something. Anyway, I'm going to leave it in B tier. I think it's usable in some build way, shape, or form, but it's not going to be an excellent weapon. It's not going to excel or get above any of the others. Laser rifle. It's fine. Does damage. Similar to the bad cook, I don't really understand why it doesn't see play. There's nothing really cool you can do with the laser rifle, so I'm going to put it a bit below the bad cook. It's just a consistent weapon. This is probably the most baseline weapon in Armored Core. Feel free to give it a try, and if you like it, maybe consider some of the better ones. LRA, definitely better than the laser rifle. Probably better than the Zwanga. Probably better than both of these. Probably better than the stun pistols. Better than tank kick? Maybe. Better than Etsujin? I mean, this is a good weapon. Maybe I even put it at the bottom of A tier. This weapon's a bit sleeper. So the thing with LRA is if you use the charge shots on tank or quad legs, it is very, very hard to avoid. It is very high pressure. It does a lot of damage, and it doesn't overheat. So I would consider... Does it not overheat? That might not be true. I know it applies a lot of pressure. It might just be that it cools down fast enough that it doesn't feel like it overheats. Either way, I really recommend running this, especially with VE20B on quad legs or tank legs, and it really applies a ton of pressure. I think it's a good build. I think it's kind of sleeper, so I'm not putting it up higher because I haven't really seen anyone pop off with it. But I've seen a couple players like demonstrate the kind of power that this has in scrims, and it's there's something there. So consider trying out the LRA. LRB, I'm gonna put it in S tier below Zims. People like to run LRB with shields, similar to the Zim build, except that you can run a heavier build because the LRB works from further away. You still probably want to run Ocellus, just like with Zimmerman's. Although I've seen some people running Walter FCS, I don't agree with that, but people are doing it, so please make your own decisions. Try out both FCS with this if you're going to use this weapon. Yeah, LRB is good. I used it very consistently last season. I think it's great for dealing damage to lightweights, especially while they're running, and it is never really bad. I think Zims are probably better at some of the jobs, but you have to play a lighter build, and that can be harder. So this is like sort of a crutch weapon, but it's a crutch weapon I enjoyed. Laser shotgun. I want this weapon to be good. I don't think it is. I'm coping, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier. It's the crossbow. It's so cool. It's so cool. But is it good? That remains to be seen. Actually, it doesn't remain to be seen. It's not that good. I'm gonna leave it here. I want to cope. Just let me have this. Wooger. Wooger's better than both of these weapons. I don't care what people say. This weapon is crazy. It stuns you when you hit people with it. It applies a lot of pressure. It fires really fast. It's good into shields. It's good into Lamb. You have to get close, but like you should run Wooger. Its charge shot is ridiculous. You don't even really need VE20B to abuse it. You can run Coral Gen, and it works just fine. This is really, really impressive weapon. It's very strong. It's in a lot of landmine builds, and it probably deserves to be in some top-tier builds as well, although people don't really run it very much. Laser handgun. I think it's a bit better than the laser rifle in practice. It's probably a bit better than the bad cook. It does a lot of DPS. It doesn't really do anything exciting. It just does damage. But it does a lot of damage. And so with VE20B, it's probably a better choice than the laser rifle. It does about the same thing, similar range, and just does a little bit more damage. The big problem with this weapon is that if you are not super careful, you can accidentally fire a charge shot and just like instantly kill yourself. It's actually a problem with the Wooger too, which is maybe why it doesn't see as much competitive play, but it's less of a problem with the Wooger than it is with the laser handgun. It's so easy to do that. The VVC plasma gun. This weapon, I have seen some people arguing that this weapon is really good. I have seen it perform. It is about the same as the Dizzy for me. I'm going to say more people have said that this is good. It applies a very large AoE. It does a lot of damage and stagger, but it is very slow to reload. People typically just use the charge shots, although the rapid fire shots do a lot of damage if you're trying to punish someone. I'm not exactly sure where the niche is, but I know that this is playable and there are builds for it. So if you're finding that your nebulas are missing, I don't know why that would be happening to you, but if you're finding that that's true, you can consider trying this weapon. If you need to fire less often, but for them to be your shots to be even more obnoxious. Nebula. This is like gotta be the best weapon in the game, right? I hate this weapon. I hate playing against this weapon. It never misses. It does a ridiculous amount of stagger and damage for the fact that it never misses. It's like always up. It's just a bunch of persistent pressure. It's very annoying. There are only specific builds that can play it, usually kiting back on a tank or Lammergeier. But man, this thing, like, I don't think it needs a big nerf to not be S tier. I kind of like the niche that it fills, where it's like, it's this like weapon that never misses that you can include as like a one slot on your arm if you're using a melee weapon, and it like applies consistent pressure. But I just think it's too strong right now. I think it's just overtuned, and it's needs a tap down. Redshift. This is a good weapon. There's a build for it. It looks exactly like the Nebula, but it plays nothing like it. Muzzle velocity is really slow. Charge shots are good, especially for punish, and the regular shots are really good for laser juggler. I'm gonna put it. It's got to be better than kicking. I think it's a little bit better than the Jav Alpha. It's probably worse than the Majestic. There's a lot of applications for this weapon. I like that it's modal. I don't really think it's at its ceiling yet, just being played on laser jugglers. Usually people just like swap it back and forth, but like the charge shots really matter here. So I think this is a good weapon, and I don't really think anyone's mastered it yet. So it's pretty high up here. Walter Laser. This one's, I've seen one player use this to great effect. And then sometimes it just gets hard countered and you do nothing. So it's a meme weapon. It's going to go in the meme weapon tier, but it's a good meme weapon. I think it's probably a little bit more consistent than any of the Harris stuff I've seen. I'm sure someone will argue with me about that, because it's probably way more counterable than the Harris, but when this is oppressive, it's very oppressive. It has 3 modes. If you find that you're dying, I'm presuming you're just using the wrong mode. All of these triple-moded weapons are pretty irritating. Excuse me. Triple-moded weapons, speaking of. Karasawa. This weapon is finally playable. I'm saying it's another meme weapon. It's probably worse than the Harris. Is it gonna be worse than the Sweet 16? I don't think so. It's like somewhere around here in B tier. Blasting someone with a Sawa does a ton of stagger. That's just good for obvious reasons. It no longer knocks them out of the plasma when you stagger them, which is really nice. This is just a playable weapon. You pretty much have to use VE20B if you're using it. But I think try it out. It's definitely got some applications. It has a ton of downtime, so you need to be really careful with how you use it. I haven't found a build where it actually works yet. But if you can like blast somebody with a Sawa, do any kind of punish, and then run away, this is probably a real build. Pulse gun. There are some funny things to do with the pulse gun. This one's probably worse than the Sweet 16. The thing I have seen people do with this is run terminal armor, and then insta-kill their opponent's primal armor when their terminal armor props. So a lot of times when you're running terminal armor, what will happen is that a player will hold their pulse armor for your terminal armor, so they'll pop your terminal armor, press pulse armor, and run away. This weapon allows you to, with V20B, instantly kill their pulse armor and kill them during your terminal armor. It doesn't always work, but it's funny when it does. This one, I feel like this weapon, I've seen some applications for it, but it is pretty much just worse than the other pulse gun. It is kind of better for like rats, like if you're running away and you're blasting out these large pulses. They're hard to dodge, they can be annoying, and they interfere with like shields and things like that. So it's not nothing, but it's suspicious at best. So this is another weapon I'm coping about, but I'm not coping enough to put it in B tier. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole list. So MLT04. MLT04 is still good. I don't think it's S tier anymore, but I don't think it's better than the Majestic. It's probably better than the Jalfa. It's still a good weapon. Very consistent stagger. It's like kind of a ghost of its former self with the additional reload speed, but I think it's still worth taking it on a build that wants it. But it's much closer now than it used to be to the split, to the other options. Speaking of the other options, the split, I think it's probably worse. It's about the same, right? But I think it's probably worse. These are really situational. Like the split is better against people running at you who aren't looking. The MLT is better at people running from you or moving sideways. So I'm going to put it above, but if you want a missile hand weapon, you know, this is going to be the weapon. One of these is the weapon for you. Aperitif. This is a very specific weapon for a very specific build. I'm going to put it at the top of the meme weapons. The thing you do with Aperitif is somebody is aiming up to you, and you drop a bunch of Aperitifs on them and fall. And when the other player redlines and falls, all of the Aperitifs hit them in the head, and they are very sad. If you don't know how to do it, it's pretty useless. If you know how to do that trick, it's pretty good. So I'm going to leave it here in B tier. This is a usable weapon, but it's a very specific build that uses it, and it's not necessarily a top tier build. I don't know if it beats everything. The Foul. God, I hate this weapon. It just feels so, like, I don't want to put it in B tier. It probably is. There are so many neat tricks you can do with this, but it is so miserable to play. I'm going to put it just below the stun guns. I think the stun guns' ease of use is just, like, brings it up above this. You can curve the bullet with the Foul. You can win all sorts of weird games that you couldn't win otherwise, but it's just miserable. Whenever this weapon looks like it hits, it doesn't. The charge shot is so nerfed. It's kind of mental anguish to play this if you played it before. If you didn't play it before and you enjoy the Foul, like, go ahead. But it's hard for me to rate it above B because I just don't think it's. I think these other two missiles outclass it, and I think it's honestly not worth the mental anguish of trying to use this weapon. Pile Bunker. Pile Bunker is a meme weapon. I mean, it's got to be like, I'm gonna cope even harder for this. It's got to be playable at like you have to win probably more than 50% of your games with Pile Bunker. It just does a lot of damage, but there are better punish options. There's no better, like, endorphin option. Explosive Thrower. I think this weapon's quite good. I think it's sort of rounding out A tier right now. You can really only use this on quads from what I've seen, but the two modes are really useful. The long range Explosive Thrower catches people off guard all the time, and you can use it to, like, fire around corners and do some cool tricks. So this is a high skill cap weapon. It's not that high skill cap, but I recommend running it with, like, a Majestic Explosive Thrower quad and trying it out if you like that sort of thing. Be aware that the range is, like, pretty limited. Feels like it doesn't really work outside of 150 range. I think you can go a little further than that, but you have to be kind of a beast. And so just build around the range limitations. Chainsaw. No, chainsaw's not real. It's funny, but people slip out of it too much for me to recommend this weapon. It's not like outclassed like these other weapons. Like you can play the chainsaw, but I could never recommend it because it's just too finicky. Stun baton. Stun baton, likewise, very finicky. Doesn't really have a niche. I wouldn't run this melee weapon. It's funny, but I don't think it's good. Laser dagger. This is a great melee weapon. I would actually say this is probably one of the best melee weapons, if not the best. I'm gonna say it's just above the Jalfa. This is very consistent. If you can sometimes get people with the charge attack and lead it into a combo. You can pretty much always use it to stagger punish because it's always up. And if you want to dash cancel, this is the weapon to use because you can dash cancel, fire some weapons, and then it's up for the punish. So, like the laser dagger, one of the only legal melee options in my opinion. Laser slicer, it's not as bad as some melee weapons, but it is not really good. I'm gonna say if you it does a lot of stun. It's not impossible to find a build where this will work, but it is going to be super frustrating. The hitbox is just very, very horizontal, and it's not forgiving at all for the attacker, and it's very forgiving for the defender. So be careful about getting attached to this weapon, or you will suffer. Laser slicer. This weapon is not as good as people say it is. It does its job, but it's not the best at it. I'm going to put it in C tier, at the top of C tier. The amount of damage that the laser slicer does is almost never worth the locking yourself down, like the animation time essentially. I feel like it is just too punishable, and it's too inconsistent for me to recommend. There are better options for melee punish. Lance. This should be a D tier, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of C tier because I really, really want the Lance to work. It does a crazy amount of stagger. Really, the only problem with the Lance is that it is it's very unpredictable whether or not somebody will latch onto it. But if they do, it's a great weapon. If they just slide off every time you use it, it's terrible. So I'm not going to recommend that you play it in ranked. But in casuals, you should play the Lance all the time because it's so fun. Hammer. This weapon is S tier. Not sure if it's better than the Wooger or not. I'm going to say it's probably not. I think the Wooger is just insane. But this weapon is absurd. Comes out super fast. It applies a ton of pressure. I think if anything's going to get nerfed in an upcoming patch, it's going to be the hammer. I think it's more obviously broken than the Nebula or the Wooger. And I'm so sick of playing against this weapon. It's just... Also, it goes through walls sometimes. I don't know why. This weapon has so much overloaded stuff. I'm sure it's not intentional for it to go through walls, but... if you ever want to really abuse somebody's mental, pick up the hammer and learn how to abuse all its mechanics. Pulse Blade. I think the Pulse Blade is sort of the best melee punish option right now. I'm going to put it above the Laser Dagger because melee punish is a little bit more common than melee combos. I think this is your best option if you want to melee punish. It just has a lot of play. It can do the same thing as the laser dagger where the charge slash can stun into a combo, and it does a similar amount of damage to the laser slicer without locking you down nearly as hard. Moonlight. It's not really a build. It's better than that. Better than combo extending. Better than these suspicious weapons. But it's somewhere around here in B tier. The Moonlight does a lot of damage, and it's cool. But it doesn't really do anything special. It never feels oppressive. It always just feels fine. And that's exactly what it is. It's fine. It's in B tier. You can run this weapon if you want, but after you start climbing the ranks really high, you'll probably start to be disappointed by it. It just won't hit very often, or there'll never really be an opportunity to use it. Redshift, same story. It's probably a little bit better. These are essentially the same weapon, except for Redshift, you don't have to run VE20B for it to be useful. And I should mention for the Moonlight, you do have to run VE20B for it to be useful because it scales off of your generator. But yeah, Redshift's the same thing. It does more stagger, and it's probably generally more useful. So I'm going to rate it slightly above the Moonlight. Coral Oscillator. This weapon is pretty good. I'm going to say it's somewhere near the bottom of A tier. It has some problems where the blade just misses randomly, especially if your opponent is ascending vertically when you're using the charge shot. And the vertical slash, like the default slash, can also miss in situations where you really need it not to. However, I think the pressure applied by this weapon is really good, and if you learn how to Demon Blade, so you start the Coral Oscillator charge attack, go into manual lock, and reorient your AC so that the Demon Blade comes out facing the opponent instead of facing to your left, this can be a very, very powerful weapon. But the skill cap's super high, and it is a bit inconsistent. That said, I recommend trying it if you like this kind of thing. The weapon screams, and it does a billion damage, so you'll at least have fun. As long as you don't mind like losing some games to this missing, because you will. Pulse Shield. Yeah, this is absurd too. It's probably better than the hammer. The Pulse Shield's just ridiculous. This weapon, it's not a weapon. It's a shield, but it is a weapon. It's so absurd. It's a bit overtuned, and I don't really think it needs a... It's like the Nebula. It doesn't need a huge nerf to take it out of the S tier. But, yeah. The Pulse Shield enables tons of build archetypes. You run double Zims with Pulse Shield, double LRVs with Pulse Shield. LRV and Etsujin with Pulse Shield. And you can just run at people and apply a ton of pressure, and you can't get punished by the hammer, and it's great. There are ways to punish the Pulse Shield, but we're going to get to those in a little bit. That said, this remains an S tier part. It's just super good. This one is a little bit more limited. If you really can't equip the Pulse Shield, I'm going to say it's the top of C tier, you can run this lighter weight, lower energy Pulse Shield. But just make room for this Pulse Shield. It's just better. Round Pulse Shield. This is not as good as I previously thought. I can't really think of any builds for this currently. There was previously a build I really liked with Haldeman, Round Pulse Shield, where you just held the Round Pulse Shield down, fired Haldemans, and kicked, and then this would always be up whenever you weren't Haldemaning or kicking. But I think the number of long-range builds and lighter builds in the meta right now really limit the ability of this Pulse Shield to be effective. So I wouldn't recommend trying one of those builds. Similarly, I think the bucklers are low B tier. I'm going to put them both in at the same time because I don't really know which one's better than the other. These are useful if you're firing a cannon. So you fire the cannon and you hold down the buckler at the same time so you can't get punished during your animation. But firing cannons just like raw like that, they're probably not going to hit. So maybe you could find a way to make this weapon work. Maybe it protects you when you're trying to do something really important, but I haven't found the build for that yet. I don't think anyone has. That said, I'm not saying that's impossible, and I'm going to leave them in B tier. Similarly, the... I don't even remember what this is called. The Scutum. Scutum had a top 100 build last season as Lamb. So, take it with a grain of salt because it's Lamb. But Scutum, I think, can see a little bit more play. In fact, I think it's more real than this stuff because this is all sort of theoretical. But I'm not sure. Like, if you really enjoy grindy games, you'll enjoy the Scutum. If you don't enjoy grindy games, stay the hell away from this weapon. And I think it's punishable. I think it's counterable. I think a lot of the good weapons just kind of like are good into Scudum. So um, I'm not sure it's well positioned, but you can abuse lower rated players pretty heavily, and you can abuse like pretty much any random build that isn't like a top tier build pretty heavily with this. Coral Shield. I don't think the Coral Shield is real. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier because it does have like an application where you can use it on bipeds. Um, it like lets you use your shield while you're firing weapons. So I'm not going to say it's completely useless, but most of the time you can find a window to fire your weapons with the pulse shield where you're not going to get punished. So I don't really see a need for the Coral Shield. And the stats are just not good anymore. It doesn't really block that much, and it's kind of actively punishing if you hold it too long. So it's sitting near the bottom of B tier is probably a build for it, but I think it's more likely that you'll find a buckler build. Oh, I don't remember what this weapon is called, but the Gat Cannon. Gatling Cannon's good. It fills a role in a build. It's probably not as good as Tank Kick, but it is effective. If you need to build up stagger in CQC and you need a light weapon that has sustained fire, Gatling Cannon's a very, very good option. Morley. I'm going to zoom out a little more so everyone is on the same page. All right, Morley. This weapon is good. There's got to be a build for it, but it's like somewhere around the Kurosawa where like theoretically it works, but in practice it like never really works. It doesn't feel oppressive. Sometimes you could just randomly kill people with it, especially if you're running dual Morleys, but there are better options, and it doesn't really beat Lamb, so that's a pretty big strike against it. Earshot. Earshot is like the king of mean weapons. Pretty much every cheese build on the ladder runs an Earshot. Sometimes two. And, you know, if you're good at manual aiming, this can just be a good weapon in its own right. It isn't necessarily actually a cheese weapon. It just can be good. So I would, if you like big grenades, Earshot's the weapon for you. Just aim it at the ground, and if your opponent's anywhere within 90 meters, they're going to die. It's kind of rough against Pulse Shield, and given that Pulse Shield is one of the best builds, two of the best builds in the meta, you're going to have trouble, but you can always stagger the Earshots. Like it doesn't apply zero pressure, so I would try it out. Songbirds. Songbirds are like another weapon where you want them to be good, but they're not really. I'm going to put them in C tier. It's just like too inconsistent, really. That's all it is. A lot of times songbirds just miss and do nothing, and it feels really bad. They're cool when they hit, but even then, they like knock. If the songbird gets like the Kurosawa treatment, maybe it's better, where it doesn't knock people out of its own stagger, but it currently does knock people out of its own stagger, so it's a bit of a problem. They fixed that for the Jalfa and the Kurosawa, but not for this weapon yet. Stun Needle. It's a myth. It's a cool myth, but it's a myth. This is not a real weapon. It never actually works out. It does damage on its own, but there's like always better punish. You should pretty much just run the LCS. But it's funny. So, you know, top of the C tier. And it's not like useless. Like you can win games with it, but you have to be better than your opponent, and you'd win games more easily if you were running a better weapon. Speaking of a better weapon, LCS. This one goes in S tier. I think this weapon is very, very good for applying pressure to pulse shield, especially on biped legs. I mean, it's good on all the legs. It's just if you are a biped leg, it's probably one of your best options for applying pressure to pulse shield. You run around 2 LCS, and then you just stagger fire them with whatever your hand weapons are. And pulse shield really has a hard time keeping up. I use this to great effect to beat players like 432, Risa on ladder. So I know it's effective. It's probably like the weakest of the S tier weapons because it requires you to stop to fire, and it has some rough matchups. But even then, I'll like keep it on against Lamb. So if I'm running LRB, LCS, I will keep both of them in when I'm playing against Lammergeier, just to try and get that extra punish damage because it isn't like too heavy. If you're playing against lightweight kite, like ground kite, I would recommend dropping it and just trying to finish them with the LCS or with the LRBs or Zimmermans or whatever your hand weapons are, because these won't help you a lot. But the more floaty build like Lamb, where they don't want a quick boost, or the PS builds, the LCS is very useful. LCA. I think it's somewhere in the meme weapons. It's better than the Kurosawa. Is it better than the Harris? I don't think so. LCA does a lot of damage. It has a very high opportunity cost. It is super heavy, hard to run. But the charge shot does a lot of damage. The uncharged shot does a lot of damage. There's probably a niche for it. I used to try to do a BVO style build with a pulse shield LCA and 2 handguns, where you just tap the LCA when they get stunned. But I haven't seen anyone really make an effective build in the top 100 with this yet. So still awaiting that. If you do, at me, and I will check it out. I would love to see a build using the LCA. LCB. This weapon's been nerfed. It is no longer the demon that it used to be, but it is still very good. I'm going to put it somewhere in A tier, probably above the Haldeman and all of the kicks, and the Jalfa, and the melee. Yeah, it's somewhere around here near the top of A tier. The fire rate nerf hurts a lot. It is no longer S tier, godlike, super ultimate weapon. However, if you're good at manual aim, this weapon is still insane. If you do charge shot with manual aim, you can just instantly stun people and do a ton of damage, and it's really hard to come back from. It doesn't have as ridiculous of a hitbox anymore, so you have to be better to use it. But it does still do a ridiculous amount of damage. Charge shot wasn't nerfed that much. LCB is definitely a contender, especially if you like manual aim. LCD, very, very similar to the LCB. I think it's a little bit better. People are running LCD on tanks. The buff it got where the shot spread is a little bit tighter is a huge buff, and it really helps make this weapon feel good. I would not run it outside of quads and tanks. I would just run the LCS because the LCS doesn't stance as long and has like a little bit longer range sometimes. But LCD definitely has a niche, and it's somewhere between, like, it's like close range LCB. It's probably better than LCB in close range, whereas LCB is like better at middle ranges. Fasan. This is an S tier weapon. Fasan is super good. It's another manual aim weapon, but it is deadly. It has this like airburst range. I don't remember what exactly it is. It's like right outside of max range, where players will just manual aim Fasan at you, and you'll take like 2,000 damage for no reason, because you're sitting at 500 meters and you don't realize that they're not using their FCS to lock onto you. They're using their eyes. So, Fasan charges super fast, does a lot of stagger, does a lot of damage. It's great for punishes. It goes through, like if you pulse armor too late, it just does full damage and stagger through your pulse armor, so it can stun you during pulse armor or just kill you. This is a great weapon. It's a really specific playstyle. You kind of want to learn manual aim if you're going to use it, but it will pay off. Zoom out a little more. We're running out of space. I believe this is the pulse gun. I don't think this is a real weapon. You should probably use your shoulder slot on anything else. Probably anything else. It's probably better than the GAT and the attaché, but I don't know how much better it is than any of that stuff. This is like, you're really wasting a slot with this weapon. Just like if you want applied pressure, use the LCS. It does a ton of damage to pulse armor anyway, and it does like anything else. Pulse shield launcher. There's probably an application for this, and I think it's more likely to find it than it's like somewhere around like punch, stagger, combo extends. I've seen more of this than I've seen of this, but hiding behind pulse shields that you launch out is not completely useless, and I've seen some players abuse it in the past. It's probably really high skill, and if you don't have someone to teach you how to do it and you're learning on your own, it's going to take a long time. But if you really, really want this to work, it probably can work. You really have to commit to being an absolute monstrous rat. Aurora. The Aurora is good. It's a very solid S rank or A rank missile. It forces Lamb to quick boost, which is really valuable. And it has like decent damage. I'm gonna put it above the Haldeman. It's not really a meme weapon in A tier, but it is like it does feel bad that the missiles were nerfed. It doesn't really feel as oppressive as it used to, and you know, it's fine. It's good. You'll probably enjoy using it, but I don't think you'll ever be like super excited by this weapon. It's just going to be consistent. It's going to do damage when it's supposed to. You have to run B20B, by the way. Don't run it without B20B. 4 missile. It's just like usually outclassed. And it's going to put it at the top of C tier. Like you should make room for the 6 missile, but like it exists, right? Like if you need to make a weight consideration, maybe you can run the 4 missile. 6 missile. This is just a great missile. It's just like good. It's sort of a similar place to the Gatling cannon. It's just like it's good. It fires 6 missiles, and it does what it says on the tin, and it's light, and when it's done, it does it again, and it doesn't really like have any weird interactions or anything that can mess you up. You should, you know, it's just a nice weapon to round out a build. 10 missile, similar to the 6 missile, except it fires more missiles, and it's a little bit more effective. And again, you don't need to use missile FCS for this. I'm actually going to put it even higher. But it's like nothing exciting. You're just applying pressure with missiles. It's not going to feel powerful. It's not going to feel oppressive when you're using it, but it is going to do consistent damage, and it is sometimes the piece that you need to make your build work. It's especially good with Pulse Shield. I see a lot of 10 missile Pulse Shield with like 2 Zimmermans or 2 LRBs. You need to be aware that some animations cancel the 10 missiles firing, and it can be limiting to the way that you want to play. It's sort of one of the reasons the 6 missile is good, because they all fire at once, whereas the 10 missile fire in sequence. Splits. Splits are good. They're just good. They're a little bit more niche than the 10 missile or the 6 missile, but there are builds that these work on. I think probably the best split is the lightest one because you can fit it on Lammergeier. But the other splits are also good. They're all pretty much the same. I'm just going to rank them in the order that I think they're good, but like take it with a grain of salt. They're similar to the hand splits, except they take longer to lock on, and that's really the only downside. You probably should run the missile FCS, although it's less mandatory than it was previously. Duos. The duo missiles are likewise good. I don't think they're quite as good as the splits, but in missile builds I've seen them do work. In kite builds I've seen them do work. I think in threes you want to run the smaller ones so that it's up more often for you to clean. In singles, probably the triple missile's better. This large duo I think is worse than the other duos, and also worse than most of these weapons. It's somewhere around the Karasawa and the LRA. Like, you like want it to work, and sometimes it works, but it doesn't ever actually feel good. I'm gonna say it's better than these. It has the same problem as the 10 missile, except it misses a lot more often. In a lot more situations. The angles that the missiles fire at are useful, but I don't know. It's hard for me to recommend this weapon. Usually there's a better missile you can play in its slot. But not always. Like there's definitely, it's not like a clear favorite. It's a unique missile, so sometimes this might be the missile that you need. Verts, sorry. I'm gonna try and keep the whole tier list on the screen. Vertical missiles, worst weapon in the game. And it's worse than nothing because you can't purge it and switch to your hands. There's literally worse than nothing. They're worse than nothing in that order. Don't play vertical missiles. Wait for them to buff them. It needs proc stat and like it'd be fine. But it's so bad right now. Don't play this. In fact, it might not even be fine with proc stat. The tracking is so horrible. Like stops tracking at 200 meters in the air and just like hits the ground. It's really bad. Act missiles. These are somewhere up near the splits. Probably the duo act is a little better than the single, but they're very similar. These are just missiles that apply a lot of pressure. They can do a lot of stagger and do a lot of damage. A lot of the time, you want to be running Coral instead of these, but I think there are like energy considerations sometimes where the active missiles are good. So it's just another missile in your arsenal if you're playing a missile build. Container missile, meme weapon alert, and not a particularly good one. We're going to say it's somewhere around the stun needle. You like want it to be good, but it never really is. It'd be so cool if somebody found a build where this worked, but I still haven't seen it, and most of the time it just feels like you're adding weight to your AC to kick them harder. D-Boy. This weapon is worse than the Lance. It's probably not as bad as the Chainsaw, but it is super inconsistent. And even when it works, it doesn't really do much. So maybe it's better. It's probably better in D tier. D tier for D-Boy. It's just like, it's the funniest D tier weapon. It's the second funniest D tier weapon. But I don't think it's good. I think it just gets countered too easily by almost everything. Soups. Soup is great. Soup is a fantastic weapon. Let's zoom out so you can see what we have left. I don't think it's S tier, but Soup is a fantastic missile option if you just need one missile. I think it's usually better than the 10 cell. It applies a lot of pressure to LAM. They have to do very specific movements to avoid it. It's probably better than the red shift. In fact, the red shift should be further down. I don't know if it's better than the Majestic. It's in a similar area. It's probably better than Majestic. I think the smoke launcher beats it heads up, but yeah, I love the Soup as a single missile option. I think it's fine as a dual missile option. It's expensive to run, so it's like heavy and it costs a lot of energy, but yeah, it's just a really good missile. Especially if you're trying to beat LAM. I really like it against LAM. Jav B. Jav B is no longer S tier. I don't know if I ever put it in S tier. I probably should have. It was insane. But it's no longer S tier. I'm going to say it's near the bottom of A tier. It's still good, but there are other options you can run now that are sometimes better. It has just been nerfed a little too much for my comfort. You know, it's more consistent than those weapons, but it's not like it's sort of a shadow of its former self, in my opinion. I know a lot of people still like this weapon, still think it's super good, but playing against it, I don't feel anywhere near as threatened as I used to. This is my biggest, like my most favorite change of patch 1.06 for my playstyle is that the Jav B is no longer as threatening as it used to be. Treno. This is a missile that you want to work, but like never really does. I'm gonna say it's very similar to the FOW. It's probably a little bit more effective, where it, like, you know what you want it to do in theory, and then you fire it and like it bounces off someone, or it like just misses. Like, I want it to be good so bad, and it's good at forcing quick boosts on LAM, but like it just so often doesn't show up. It's very frustrating. Pulse missile. I think this is great. This is a great missile. I think it's a little bit behind the 10 cell, but it's super light. But I think it's a really good consideration if you're running like a one single shoulder missile or two shoulder missiles in a combo, or like some kind of rat. I think this is a great missile. The 5 split gets, it just gets beat out by the single pulse missile. It's almost never better. It's just more weight and longer reload. So for the same reason the 4 cells down here, this is going to be down in C tier. VPM. VPM has a niche now. It's no longer OP. It's sort of around where this duo missile is. It's probably better. It's really good at punishing tanks or people who sit near the ground. It's avoidable now, but it does still apply pressure. It is still a VPM. It's good at maintaining stagger against specific targets. But it's like a meta call, right? So if you see a lot of tanks, like VPM can be good. And it's only one slot, so it's like a slot of your build you're dedicating to solving a meta problem. Sometimes that's what you need. So that's where B tier exists for. Coral Missile. Coral Missile's S tier. It's good. It has more situations where it's not good compared to the LCS, but yeah, it's still a very good weapon. It does a credible amount of damage when it works. You can combo hammer into it, and it's very oppressive and annoying. Specifically, like the dot, like of the little squigglers hitting you in the back while you're trying to play the game. Sometimes they staggers it into itself, which is really nice. And since the ranked maps didn't change for this season, Core Missile is still going to be dominant because there's just these huge skyboxes you have to run through to get to lambs. Huxley. Huxley, very similar to the Gatling Cannon. I think it's a little worse, but I'm going to say they're effectively equivalent. It's just up to personal preference, in my opinion, which one you want to run, whether it's easier for you to hold down the button and let it overheat when you're not pressing the button, or whether you just want to press the button and let it overheat on its own. Laser Drone. I think this weapon does damage. I want it to work. I think there might be a build for it, but I'm not sure what it is yet. It's a little bit less effective than just stagger punching, chaining people, but I don't think it's bad. I think it does damage now. I don't necessarily know if like you're ever going to be excited running it. There's so many other options, but you know, this might be the weapon for you if you just want to pump damage, like you want to run 2 laser drones, 2 laser pistols, and just like fire a billion lasers. Then this weapon does that, and that build is funny and it does a lot of damage. So you know, there's a build for it. Laser turret, very similarly. I think this is like sort of a high skill option. You can kite people through laser turrets. They do a lot of damage. You have to like play a very specific way to get this weapon to work, but I think it does work when you play that specific way. And yeah, I think there is a niche for it. If you lose AP lead, it's pretty much useless. Most players are just going to fight you out of it. So you have to maintain AP lead the entire game, but if you've managed to do that, it can be oppressive. Laser drones. This is another excellent single shoulder option. I'm going to say it's probably better than the soup. Laser drones are, again, directly countered by the smoke, so I'm going to leave the smoke above them. But laser drones are a very go-to favorite to pair with the pulse shield. You just charge up laser drones, and they punish really well on stagger. They're also the weapon that you most typically see punch combos with. They're on lots of melee builds. Sometimes people just drop all their weapons and rat you with 2 laser drones, and you lose to that. So this is a great weapon. It is avoidable. It's like it doesn't really have the same like assuredness as some of the S rank weapons do, but I think very powerful and a good addition to build that just needs a shoulder slot that does a lot of damage and is like a little bit of pressure. So anyway, that's my tier list for patch 1.06.1. I hope that this helps you climb the ladder in Ranked Season 2. If you like this video and want me to make more content like it, please like the video, subscribe, leave a comment if you think that I said anything stupid or you don't like the way I talk. I love reading those comments, and they really help the engagement on my channel. So definitely, if you don't like me, tell me. I would love to hear it. That said, I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.